Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm William Stout here with Watercube. There are only two of us tonight so far. Whether or not someone shows up later, we'll let you know. But we're having a fun week this week. You know, not a lot's happened in the news, and frankly, we're sick and tired of talking about the world because it gets a little depressing. So, Watercube, it was your idea, so why don't you introduce us to our topic tonight?
We're going to be talking about culture, like art, music, if we want to, just television, media in general. That kind of just broad subject there, because it's good to appreciate the beauty of the world, not just focusing on that negativity, as William mentioned.
So, where do you think we should start?
Well, let's start. Continue with music. To anyone listening to this now, we were talking about music before we hit the record button, and I think we could use that momentum and inertia from that conversation here. You were talking about metal that you listen to?
Yeah, I really grew up on the classics of heavy metal, but as I got older, I really got into power metal. People like Sabaton and more of the upbeat metal instead of like the like grittier stuff from the 90s.
I went the opposite direction with my metal journey. I started with power metal. A Swedish friend recommended me Sabaton. I did not know it was going to be all about history. He just sent me a link to the like Swedish lyric stuff, and then I went on a journey more towards doom metal with groups like Sleep and Moss.
Yeah, my dad was a big, of course, his heyday was the 90s, and so he was big into like the thrash metal and like the punk resurrection of the 90s. And so I grew up in that, and I really that's what I grew up in, but I really came to love like the more upbeat and more like, I guess you could call them the exotic kinds of metals like Ailstorm and Sabaton and like all those interesting more themed metals.
Yeah,
Just because I found them more interesting than just, you know, the always angry sounding, hardcore sounding. And that's not to say I don't still love that, but it's a different change of pace.
yeah. You can only go on eating the same thing for how many years until you need to switch it up with new music or new anything, really.
Right. And
Sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, okay. And of course, I don't really have much of an exciting story about how I learned about Sabaton other than from the memes.
Solid
Like,
way to get into music, though. Like meme music tends to be a lot of bangers among those.
yeah. Like, if I remember correctly, the first time I heard Sabaton, it was a meme where there was a bunch of bikers on a poker run. And I don't know if you ever seen the meme before, but a trolley ends up plowing into the poker run.
I have not seen this meme before.
I'm hearing on a second. While we're talking, I'm gonna try and find it and DM it to you. But basically, when the trolley plows into the poker run, it starts blaring Primo Victoria.
That's a classic one to
So
use
it's
in
like,
those kinds of memes.
yeah, so it's like to
Beautiful
the gate
song.
somehow.
As we make our way through heaven, through the Nazi lines. I messed up the lyric. I,
You
I love
know,
how they theme the albums, though.
I really like Primo Victoria. I like anything having to do with D-Day because my birthday is actually June 6th.
Really, that's the same as my late mother's birthday.
My condolences.
I didn't even think about how that could be interpreted. I'm sorry. That was a little dark to bring up.
Oh, it's fine, but it's like, but yeah, the running joke in my family is that I care more about celebrating June 6th than celebrating my own birthday.
True
Like
history
last
nerd.
like last year, I forget what I think last year what I did was like the first half of my birthday, I sat down and I watched the Sabaton history or like the showing, you know, with Indie Idol.
Yeah.
I sat down and watched this 24-hour step-by-step live stream of D-Day.
You've,
That's what I did for like the first half of my birthday, and I thought it was time well spent.
you're missing on the greatest opportunity to like blackmail your family to taking you to like what's it called? reenactment, because I know they do one, like some of them in the United States. It's not 1-to-1, of course, because it's not at Normandy, but you still have the chance to guilt your family into taking you to one of those.
I'm not gonna blackmail my family into taking me to a D-Day reenactment in the U.S. If I'm gonna blackmail them to take me anywhere, I'm gonna grab my passport and blackmail them to take me to France. Better yet, do it the right way. We land in England, and then we sail to France.
You gotta borrow a little PT boat and do your own little miniature landing. Smuggle yourself in, even though it's all in the same zone, or forget what it's called.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Looks like we have... Oh, Frederick, there you are, friend. Come on up.
He's been there for a bit, so he might have raised his hand and set the phone down, or stepped away from the computer while waiting for us to respond. I think we got lost a little too much in the sauce of Sabaton.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't looking at my computer screen.
Hi.
Hey, Frederick, how you doing?
Sorry if I was a little late. I was doing some roleplay on a roleplay server.
Hey, no problem, no problem. We're having a fun night tonight, nothing super serious. We're talking about art and culture.
American culture?
Well, just
Yeah,
culture
just
in general,
culture
I
in
think.
general. Like, right now we're talking about music. What kind of music you like, Fred?
Country music. Country rock.
I'm gonna try not to judge you for that, but
Okay, country rock can be good and country can be good. I grew up on country and boy bands from my late father. Like, I know it can be good. I stand with Marty Robbins and I stand with Toby Keith. Oh,
Yeah.
Toby Keith is the one exception I will tolerate, because Toby Keith was a glorious man, and may he rest in peace, because he was a real American patriot. God bless him.
Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue is such a good song. It's that cheesy, beautiful American zeitgeist. Just, I love that song.
There are a lot of quote-unquote patriotic songs that were written by folk singers that I hate. Like, I hate that song where the singer just screams "God bless the USA" at the end of the chorus. You know the song I was talking about.
God Bless the USA, like that. The cover by I don't remember.
Like the lyrics go from the lakes of Minnesota.
Oh yeah, that one. Okay, have you ever listened?
Hate that song.
Okay, he has another one, POW 369. Where it's basically just about like this guy who cuts off a guy in traffic and then realizes he's a POW and just writes this serenade for him. And it's like,
Right. Oh,
to
so
have a
we
plot
got
to a song.
Oh, so we got a culture here in America that isn't in anywhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know them, rednecks. Redneck culture.
Hey,
Well, redneck culture
my
is
family.
it's like derived from that Scots-Irish culture. So you can sometimes, if you look at Irish and Scots-Irish culture, you can see the bones of the hillbilly inside of them and the redneck inside of them. That Appalachian culture.
You don't need to tell me about rednecks. Y'all need to meet my family. Okay, you see, I reserve, and this kind of goes back to country music, I reserve the right to hate country music because I live in a podunk town in the middle of nowhere. Like, I'm not going to say that my town is 100% the sticks, but it's close.
Have you heard of the redneck rave?
Sorry.
Have you heard of the redneck rave? It's essentially the Disneyland for rednecks.
Oh Lord, I don't even want to think about that. But Waterkeep, you were saying something?
I remember when I was a kid, I thought, like, here's why I get to complain about country as well. When I was a kid, I thought my dad's car could only play country. I thought that was the only music it would ever be allowed to play. That and NSYNC.
That's how I felt about my mom's car, and that's part of the reason why I hate country music. But
overexposure can kill a genre for a person. Like,
yeah, it really can.
I remember going through a phase where I just hated Owl City because that was all that would play on the radio. I remember trying to go to sleep to the radio. I think I was like around 7 or 8, and it was just Fireflies over and over, and then Hello Seattle. And I wanted to scream.
I don't remember Hello Seattle, but I remember Fireflies, and Fireflies was a wonderful song that I loved from my childhood.
Oh yeah,
And there's
I love it
just
now.
there's just something about that song that makes me feel warm and comforting.
It's disgustingly happy, which is like okay, you like that's something that you can love. When something's a little overabundant, it's sometimes just good.
You know another song that I remember from my childhood, but I did not understand and realize and like really comprehend until I was older.
What song?
Pumped Up Kicks.
Oh,
I
Oh,
like
oh yeah, that it tells
it
the
came
story about a school shooter.
Yeah, like, but it came out when I was like in sixth or seventh grade. And you know, when it's on the radio, and my mom would always keep the radio quiet, I can't really make out the lyrics. All I knew is it had a really catchy tune and a really nice chorus. And then when I grew up and I started wearing headphones and listening to music through headphones, and I could actually hear the lyrics.
yeah.
Yeah. And of course, that was back in 2017, 2018 when things got really, really bad with school shootings for a little bit. So like the fact that I had finally understood the lyrics and came to
A
comprehend
lot of
them
songs, yeah,
at
a
that
lot of
time.
songs, yeah, a lot of songs can be influenced or it can influence something.
Mhm.
Like, have you guys heard of Serbia Strong?
That's like one of
Oh,
those like meme songs that people milked for a bit too much. Like, there's also better songs coming out of the Yugoslav wars. I'm gonna be honest. Like the Albanian patriotic movement about taking over Kosovo, love that song. It's way more epic than it needs to be, but it just leans into that like sappy nationalism, and I love it. I adore it.
have, have you guys
Oh,
ever
yeah, have you heard
heard
the
the
term God is
have
a
you guys
Serb?
have you guys ever heard the Bosnian Hadith White Sharia?
No, I believe that song exists, but no, I have not heard it.
Let me
The
send this to you.
reason the
I'll say
reason
this. For what
Serbia
it's worth,
Strong came out, the reason Serbia Strong came out was created or it was released to mock the Serbs by
really,
some Bosnian guy who really hated Serbs.
Yeah, well, the
But
Yugoslav
but the
wars were
mis-
just
but the
filled with
only
that.
mistake that he did is he didn't edit the song, so it is the full version of the song, which talked about the Croatians and what this and that.
that's funny that it was made to make fun of the Serbs. But yeah, I'm trying
Yeah,
to find this.
the song was not made in Serbia, but it was made by Serbs.
Hmm. But yes, I'm gonna post this song in Stage's text chat if y'all want to listen to it. But
Serbia
Propaganda music's
Strong.
so strange.
What?
propaganda music is strange and but it's wonderful. Like I unironically am a huge fan of Red Army Choir.
Well, Red Army Choir, the Soviet music, like, well, Russian school of like music, just creates a really good sense of community or strength. Like 1812 Overture. Oh, I'm trying to think of other Russian music now. It's all blanking in my head. Even like the songs written by the soldiers, like "Don't Tell Mom I'm Going to Afghanistan," they're able to bring out these haunting tunes. "Dark Night," which is another Soviet propaganda song, again haunting, and it doesn't make it seem like they're enjoying war, but that they have to go through it, so they're trying to make the best of it. It conveys a really good message.
Yeah, it's like we see a lot of that in like patriotic war and no wait, sacred war.
Yeah,
Messed up the name and Katusha.
Katyusha is a classic. Same with the Sacred War. I honestly like the Soviet Tankist March.
I don't know that one actually.
The Red Army and the Black Baron.
Red Army, Black Baron. The Civil War music is a lot, like, it's a lot goofier. Like the Black Army released a song called "Why Didn't It Work," talking about the failed anarchist experiment.
What was that one song that the anarchists of Spain was singing.
To the barricades.
To the barricades.
And
I don't know. Anarchist in Spain lasted all of like 15 minutes because they literally attacked all of their political allies.
well, like the anarchists in Spain, they did produce interesting art though, because they were like anarchists. A lot of anarchist movements tend to make pretty decent music and pretty decent art as well. If you're like more of the more abstract stuff.
Oh yeah, Mother Russia, Mother Anarchy.
Mother Anarchy is the Ukrainian
That's the
anarchists.
sons.
Those were the Machnovites. They also
So-
released Why Didn't It Work?
So since we're talking about anarchist art, do we want to move out of music and move into art?
Well, we could still talk about art and music in relation to each
It's
other,
just
but
their movements don't last long.
that's because anarchists are silly. Like they tend to trend towards infighting.
Because they have no leader to really lead them.
And that, I don't want to get into the quagmire that is anarchist theory, because they do believe somewhat in leadership. Some of them don't. Really depends on what flavor you go with. They also like there's sometimes they believe leadership by committee. Anarchists are everywhere.
And then there's anarcho-capitalism, which is just neo-feudalism disguised
Yeah,
as
look.
that's just
Yeah, look.
neo-feudalism disguised as liberalism.
Hey, sometimes they just
Yeah.
completely embrace that after reading Hobbes and Hope, and they just become NRX, which like good for them for being ideologically honest with themselves.
Yeah, add a good flavor of liberalism to feudalism. You create anarcho-capitalism.
But back to art and music, like I'm trying to think of actual anarchist art, but a lot of what comes to mind is with again the futurists, which tended to be a synthesis of many different belief systems. Like they had proto-fascists among them.
3 arrows. The 3 arrows.
No, 3 Arrows was Social Democrat. That was
the
a social
three
democrat
are
symbol.
Democrats.
But they like to use that symbol a lot.
And
They
leftists with symbols are very wishy-washy, because there's no real ideological hardliners. A lot of the radical left spends its time going around the shopping mall of ideology, picking on different clothes to wear. One day they're an anarchist, one day they're a Trotskyite, next they're a Marxist-Leninist with Bordigist characteristics.
So
And
basically,
I feel
they're
like the
hypocrites.
reason-
So basically,
feel-
they're hypocrites one day.
Well,
Well,
it's not
I
that they're hypocrites.
I
Well, if
feel
they're
like the
changing
reason-
to become different things, then they're basically political hypocrites because
They
they're
call
not
them
speaking up.
hypocrites for that. It's like having your beliefs change, but most of the time it's based off of what they last read or what last influenced them. A lot of other people also on the right wing are like this. It tends to be just coming from a place of ideological immaturity or ideological insecurity, where they don't really know what they are. They're searching for an identity, especially in the political field, so they grasp onto different ideas as they go along.
I feel like also with leftists in the modern world in this case is that most far leftists and like hard leftists today sort of fall into this category of I want to call it manufactured what's the word I'm looking for? Manufactured opposition. Thank you.
Yeah.
I forgot the word. Where it's like it's not that they're genuinely leftist as much as it's that their idea and image of what leftism is basically a form of leftism that is not ideologically pure but has been sanitized for the purpose of being more palatable to liberalism.
Oh,
yeah.
I'd argue the complete and utter opposite,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I've been among the radical left for a while, and they will go at each other's throats as soon as you like misquote Marx or something like that. They are so for purity, that's why they can get nothing done. They'll expel half an organization because they believe the wrong pee pee poo poo ism about the commodity form.
Really?
Oh,
They
yeah.
don't really follow it as much as they say, because most of them nowadays are just lazy fucks.
To say that is also pretty unfair to them, because like it really depends on where you go. Most anarchists that I've met tend to be working class that are like working day in and day out to make ends meet. Marxist-Leninists tend to be petty
but
bourgeois middle
most-
class.
Right.
Yeah, but most of these leftists today just want free shit.
That I think you're kind of ignoring deeper motivations for the sake of just having a person to other. Like when it comes down to a leftist is a leftist either because of like ideas of social justice, ideas of economic justice, those who want just free shit tend to be boxed into like the egoists and Stirnerites, and you can tell who they are by how they talk. But most leftists have some inkling of genuine belief. They wouldn't go as hard as they would with their belief system if they didn't have that belief.
Amazed about how you say that most of them are very puritanical when it comes to their ideology, because in my experience, was particularly with leftists, but of course this is my experience, a lot of them have never read theory once in their life.
Oh, no. They don't read theory, but they're puritanical.
Well, how can they be puritanical if they don't read theory?
Oh, that's the question for the ages about the left.
Yeah.
They'll read a Jacobin article, and that's their new ideology. They'll watch a video essay, and they'll use that as the Bible for like how they should present Marxist-Leninism or whatever the fuck they want to talk about.
I mean, I'm not a Marxist, but I at least listen to the Communist Manifesto on audiobook because I actually want to understand what I'm talking about and what I'm criticizing.
Like, most of them have read the manifesto, forgot most of it, forget class analysis. Most like leftists, at least the ones that you'll see rising to prominence or becoming streamers, they're oftentimes petty bourgeois people who abandon like dialectical materialism at a whim as soon as it becomes more useful for them to deny materialism's existence in their ideological set.
Yeah.
What's dialectical materialism?
It's basically that the material world pushes forward historical progress. I only know in the context of the Feuerbach dialectic, which is like the thesis, antithesis, synthesis thing.
Is that like the whole thing where Marx goes into how everything is gradually progressing toward communism and it's unavoidable?
It's about like the contradictions in class society refining itself. It's like he does argue that it leads to communism, but you can also take the Marxist analysis and go other ways with it, which many people have.
You see, I don't follow this like linear pattern of history. I think that's disingenuous to say that history only progresses toward one thing or one inevitable model.
No, that's Marx trying to be hopeful for the future. I think less so. Like, it comes from his analysis, and he gets a fair bit right about analysis of capitalism and liberal bourgeois democracy. And a lot of what his critiques about liberal bourgeois democracy are, it doesn't fulfill its promises of equality, liberty, and fraternity.
Which I agree with 100%. That's why I'm here and a monarchist and not a
That's why they say it will never be perfect, but we should always strive to get there.
Right. Well, absolutely.
And what Marx talks about with dialectical materialism, like, and again, I'm a vulgar Marxist. I have not read enough Marx to speak confidently with this. I may be wrong on all fronts. But like how when class society kind of weeds out itself and gets more and more efficient, that it'll eventually lead to communism. I don't fully buy into that either. But I forgot where I was going with this. I'm going to be completely honest. I was just going in and describing dialectical materialism again.
Yeah. I think so.
Actually, on that, to go back to art, one of the things Marx argues is that with dialectical materialism is the material is more dominant. That's how he kind of explains it. It's relationship to capital and to things that are used to produce stuff that drives humanity forward compared to culture, which is a reaction to right Hegelians, which focused on the state and I believe on the cultural influence on the material. It's why Marx decried great man history and stuff like that.
Well, if there's competition, it'll strive for more innovation, but if there's no competition, then everything stays still.
Well, that's supply and demand. I think we're talking about. Explain it again, Watercube.
I'm more talking about just generalized historical progression, Frederick. It's kind of in the Marxist sense, where again, it was when he looks at slave society, it was patricians and plebeians, then it was serfs and lords, and in between there was the bourgeois, which eventually overthrew the lords and became the new class, and also emboldened the urban proletariat with industrialization and the expansion of industrial capital.
Right.
So basically, Marx says, as opposed to Hegel, that economics drives culture instead of culture driving economics.
Yes, he was like part of that vanguard of left Hegelians. Like it was him, Stirner, Engels, Lassalle, who invented social democracy or helped be a huge front runner for social democracy, and a couple others.
But then when Gramsci comes along, he says culture can do that.
Oh, that's Gramsci. I'm specifically talking about Marx, Gramsci, Bodega, all the people that came after Marx. They add on to the theory, but that's why there's so much debate among leftists, is because there's so many different schools of thought. You have stuff like the Frankfurt School, then you have again stuff like the International Communist Party. Oh, well, the Austrian school was libertarian.
Yeah,
and
I actually don't know who Gramsci is, but when it comes to culture, I tend to be more of a I don't want to call it social Darwinist, but a social biologist, where I try and treat cultures as if they are living things.
and like that's valid.
An organism in themselves that change, evolve, and try and duplicate themselves. Like what I talk about is in regard to like colonialism and imperialism in history. I'd make a statement that it's every civilization's natural prerogative to eventually engage in colonialism and imperialism, because that's how civilizations reproduce. That's how they
or at least that's how civilizations evolve to doing.
That's how they propagate themselves, is what I'm saying. And like any organism, a culture or civilization, a civilization is just a manifestation of a culture, wants to see itself reproduce, and that's why imperialism exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair analysis. Like a lot of the right Hegelians and like the corporatists would definitely agree with you there.
Right, and I come to this.
And even if imperialism is gone today, there's a new form of it that isn't exactly, taking full control of the country, but it controls its banks, its resources, and
Well, I would say that imperialism isn't necessarily militaristic. It's not always militaristic. It's just when a culture propagates, it imposes itself on another. Like I would say, America has a huge.
But it can also drive for economic.
Well, it tends to be cultural gets its foot in the door, then money follows.
Because and economics was a reason why they wanted to go colonize people. Was because they realized that if we could colonize these peoples because their resources, we could make a lot of money off it.
Right. Well, and yeah. I think that the Rome of our time currently is the British Empire, and basically it's the fact.
Actually, the Vatican was.
Well, like if you count cultural Catholicism, but Catholicism is so varied.
Because what happened to the Roman Empire? It became a church.
Well, yeah, we could talk about the Vatican in the Middle Ages, but
when I'm talking about like cultural influence of like the British on the world, where a lot of countries are still nominally in the Anglosphere, British common law has been a huge influence to a lot of developing nations, and via America has had like Anglophilic culture spread all throughout the world.
Yeah. Like it or not, with America being the predominant successor to the British Empire, we live in the Anglican century. And especially with the creation of the internet. And, I was once watching a video, and it was a funny video about a Turk and a Serb arguing and insulting each other. I'm pretty sure y'all have seen this one before. The one where they start talking about why the Turk is like, why you always lose. And,
I might have seen that. I've seen the one where it was like a Turk and a Greek arguing.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like the important and the most significant part of that video was that they both mutually chose to argue in English.
Yeah.
Not any other language. They mutually chose to argue in English. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's like the Turks and the Greeks, two of the most prominent civilizations to ever exist in history, are choosing to argue in the language of what was considered a provincial backwater of the Roman Empire. This is a cultural victory.
America, Britain have achieved the one thing that civilizations have strived for years, is to have their language and their culture and their products to reach the ends of the earth. Like you can go all the way out to the middle of Siberia and you'll find people like that have been native there for millennia, listening to Lil Uzi Vert. Like
That is horrifying to think about.
We won. Not the moon landings, but our pure cultural export.
For better or worse, I will say, there are some things in American culture that I do not like. Like, I am not a fan of our rampant materialism.
Oh yeah, but that's like the number one thing we're able to export.
Actually, right, what's happening in America is ultra individualism.
Which
I
consumerism plays into inherently, because it's all about finding and buying an identity.
I do not care for our hyper individualism either, but it's unfortunately part of our culture.
But it's a negative part of our culture.
Right.
Yeah, well, all cultures have good and bad parts of them. There's no culture that's purely a moral good when it comes down to it. Like, even the most moral and upstanding cultures, or ones that are romanticized, have their dirty underbelly.
But my question is, how long do we think Anglo hegemony is going to continue? Because I don't actually see a Chinese cultural imperialism really breaking out because of how.
Well, because of their initiative called the Road and Belt Initiative, it could lead to that.
Well, that
won't lead to like a cultural imperialism, because China has never focused on cultural export that heavily. At most, they focus on maybe some of their ethics being exported and working with groups that align with their ethics. But they're not. Chinese is never going to become a lingua franca. One, it's way too complex for a lot of people to learn. And two, it's just, they don't have that commerce impact. Most of like Chinese like exports somewhat filter through that Anglosphere or the Francosphere.
Hey, do either of you gentlemen notice Arjun Palmer in the audience? He was asking to come up.
I have him friended, but I do not recall who he is. Sorry, Arjun. I didn't see your message earlier. Adding me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and invite him up. Yeah, come on up, bud.
Well, I say.
I
think China has the biggest like trading sector overall. I think a lot of its trade is more hard industry than cultural exports.
Yeah.
100%.
So it's essentially trade export.
Now, I would probably say that in terms of like hard industry, I think China actually has a lot more than the U.S.
Oh, like we basically moved all our industrial capital to China. It got all the jobs went away to there. We focused only on
China, but to the rest of the world.
Well,
this might now. While we're talking about cultural imperialism, this might just be my inner weeb talking. But what is the chance of there eventually being a Japanese cultural like?
It'll be filtered through America.
I would argue that Japan probably has the second biggest cultural export after the U.S. because I mean you used to have like Mario, Pokemon, many anime, like those are like stuff that are around the world.
Dragon Ball and like Latin America is huge.
Well, I would also have to make the statement: it's like, is Japan exporting its own culture, or is the Japanese culture they're exporting so heavily influenced by America, like when it comes to like animation and everything, and how we basically brought that to them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is how much of Japan is still Japan that they're exporting.
Well, I'm a Pokemon fan, and I can tell you that there are a fair bit of like Japanese cultural references in the show.
Like one thing I would want to bring up.
Also, you have the Koreans there also exporting their culture.
Well, the Koreans aren't that big on cultural export as Japan is, but most of the Japanese exports do. I've heard of like some phenomena where the more Japanese stuff is pushed to the center because Americans find that a lot more appealing, and Western audiences find that a lot more appealing than stuff that has been heavily Americanized.
If I remember, it really spiked during the COVID period, where
people were inside watching anime.
Because when people saw this, they were thinking like, "Why would you watch this?" To being, "Oh, what episode is it?"
And I see the Koreans experimenting a lot with their own form of comics, which they call manhwa, based off of Japanese manga.
That's fair.
So I'm really starting to believe that maybe Japan might become a regional culture hegemon.
I think they've always had that high influence in both Koreas, actually, because I've seen one argument that Juche was inspired by state Shintoism heavily. And in South Korea, it's been an artistic influence after both states became nominal liberal democracies.
And I'm pretty sure if
Hey,
a
can I say?
Korean
Can
heard
I
us say
Can
it,
I
they'd be
can I step in?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm pretty-
Well, the thing is that I think Japan is a big influence on like our video games and our like TV shows, but like I don't see many like Japanese chain restaurants like America does around the world.
Sushi?
There's no what?
Sushi.
I mean, yeah, that's fair, but like
Wagyu beef as well.
Oh, I see. But like, is there like a Japanese equivalent to McDonald's?
Well, it's
Are
because
you-
they've never America's home of the franchise and the fast food. Basically, it's hard to export that compared to Japan.
Have you guys?
Although, if we really want to talk about Japanese food cultural exports in regard to cuisine, we cannot pass up the predominance of ramen.
Oh, ramen. That's a
Ramen.
big one. That's like that. Like they won over generations of college students that had like broke wallets, like that nothing in it, just by exporting top ramen.
The
That's fair.
Japanese truly are America's
For
truly are a
college.
worthy rival to Americans when it comes to cheap convenience food.
Yeah.
Just because of
that's
the
fair.
existence of ramen.
I think honestly, how Japanese culture works is we're influenced by the media, and that drives some people to try to bring that culture over here. But it comes over in an Americanized way, either in infrastructure or art. Like Vaporwave, to get back to music, was heavily influenced by Japanese music, Japanese aesthetics, but also 1980s American aesthetics, where it was that intersection.
Yeah. Let's not
And
even
then-
talk about the massive censorship that a lot of like Japanese cartoons have when they come over to the West.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like scenes that in the Japanese versions wouldn't be allowed over here.
Yeah.
Right. Which is
Like,
why most weebs still to this day prefer piracy rather than official streaming.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's,
It-
well, yeah. Censorship is a big part of it. Like in
It
I
has
needed to
been,
think
yeah.
about it, but like I know in Pokemon there was an episode that got censored because somebody pointed a gun at Ash. There
Yeah,
was another episode that had guns that wasn't censored, so that's funny. But yeah.
But yeah, it's like for those of you who don't know, there isn't quite a fan base more dedicated to piracy as Western consumers of anime. And it's not for any specific reason involving us being like super duper cheap or anything. But it has to do with there's like two companies that are the sole arbiters of anime access in the West.
Well, it
And
used to be
they
it
basically
used to
do
be
whatever they want.
Yeah, it used to be 4Kids.
y'all
Right?
remember Kiss anime?
Now,
That's how I got introduced to anime, and it's like, but yeah,
True patriot.
yeah, but it's like, so before
Yeah.
someone gets on me about advocating for piracy, we're in the right in this regard simply for the fact that we are facing a legitimate monopoly on the service, and a monopoly in itself is immoral. Because not one person should have sole control over a product or a service.
yeah.
For those who do partake in piracy, don't forget to seed your fucking torrents. Oh, I shouldn't have swore. I just realized that as soon as I said that. But seed your torrents. I've seen many an anime's torrents die. I had to scour the internet to find Dragon Ball Super. And that shouldn't be that hard to find. It's Dragon Ball Super.
Hang on a second, my friend. I have a website for you. I'm gonna forward
I
it.
am morally
Pokemon,
against streaming.
One of the Pokemon series, like there was a Pokemon series that Netflix made, and they almost had to take it down, and like there was a bunch of outcry and it stopped, but they literally almost take down their own series.
Okay, I want to say this about Dragon Ball, but did you know that like I think Japan, like the company that creates Dragon Ball, had to send a cease and desist to so many movie theaters in Mexico because they would air episodes in the theaters for free, and I think the government was doing that at some point.
Damn.
You know,
Like,
one of the biggest
Yeah,
things.
apparently, Dragon Ball is like a national religion in Mexico for some reason.
it's huge in all Latin American areas because it was one dubbed before a lot of Western cartoons were moved over there, and also because Dragon Ball isn't as conservative as Western cartoons, it just popped off a lot better there.
You
Oh, I
know,
see.
I've never seen Dragon Ball, but I've always found it fascinating because of how not only how popular it is with the Latin American community, but how popular it became among Black Americans.
Okay, let me tell you about Dragon Ball. I watched all of Dragon Ball over the course of 2 weeks, chronologically, from the beginning of Dragon Ball to the end of GT, and all the movies in between. That's a lot of Dragon Ball, and it's
That
great.
is
It's
a
worth
lot
it.
of Dragon Ball.
Like, I think it was around 400, 500 episodes, but
But
Yeah.
alas, I cannot watch it because I gave up anime for Lent.
wait for Lent to be over and just enjoy Dragon Ball. It's a great
Yeah.
adaptation at the beginning of Journey to the West, and then it becomes just this weird story that you don't know where the hell it's gonna go. Twist and turns every corner. Like 1 minute, it's like, oh, it's this boy going on adventure, training to become the best martial arts master. Oh, he's an alien. Oh, that alien did a bunch of genocides. Oh, he was turned into a child again. Like, they
But
keep finding ways to employ that child's
another
voice
thing,
actor.
another old anime series that Zaonic really got me into is Zaonic. Do you know who Zaonic American is, right?
Yeah,
He got me
Gundam?
into Gundam.
The classic. I need to watch Gundam. I have a friend who's way into Gundam. Couldn't really get into it myself. I haven't found it hasn't clicked with me yet. I need to give it more of a chance.
Dance style, or is it that? or-
My biggest concern about getting into Gundam is buying the figurines because those cost an arm and a leg. It's worse than Warhammer minis.
Yeah, it's the Japanese version of Warhammer.
And the fact that the Koreans, well, how do I say it about their preferences to looks
The
and shit.
weirdest thing about Koreans has to be their obsession with
Beauty.
plastic surgery. Like, what's the statistic on how many Koreans actually get plastic surgery?
I know it's really high. I actually had a friend considering to travel to Korea to get plastic surgery, not for aesthetic reasons, but because of issue with their breathing, because it's so cheap over there, because it's so common.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I find it really unhealthy that they have such unrealistic or horrific beauty standards that it's so common for people to get plastic surgery over there.
It's one of the main reasons why feminism is growing over there so much is to fight against those beauty standards, because it does come from a very
Japan?
patriarchal view.
Talking
Korea.
about Japan? Oh, Korea. Oh.
Yeah.
The is the highest suicide rate.
Yeah, there's those societies over there do have very big systemic issues that I think also Western audiences tend to ignore or don't read into when looking at the media from those countries, because it does affect them heavily.
Yeah, when you get disappointment from your parents, might help you come see up so you could fall from a higher building.
Wait, what?
It's a joke. It's a joke that I read about the Koreans.
The other thing with Korea and
Korea, their parents, even though their kids do everything to please their parents, they still hate them.
I feel like that's just a standard stereotypical joke about East Asian parents anyway.
There is somewhat of a nugget of truth to it, because I was actually watching some videos recently about it was coming from a Korean woman talking about Korean American woman talking about why she doesn't date Korean men and most East Asian men, and it's talking about how that the Confucian ethic still exists in the familial structure and leads to a high level of misogyny, and how it kind of causes issues in that dating scene where respect isn't given.
Interesting.
And that Confucian psychology kind of goes into ethic, goes back into the family, where again that parent-child relationship can be very strained because of those expectations with how the Confucian ideal views the family as a very rigid structure.
It's everywhere in Asia. China.
One of the interesting things you can see, especially in like Korea and Japan, mostly in Korea, less so Japan, is that the divide between left and right isn't just like socially conservative, socially liberal, stuff like that, but it's a Confucian legalist like divide, where
Yeah.
the left-wing parties tend to be a lot more legalistic compared to the right-wing parties, which tend to be Confucian.
Yeah. But Japan,
Interesting.
really hard to say because they're neo-Confucianists.
Well, it's more like just something that you can notice as a trend between the political parties, like the Japanese Communist Party. From a little bit of the philosophy that I've read from that organization, tends to be on that more legalistic mindset. But they also are just kind of a strange bunch. They're one of the world's largest non-ruling communist parties, and it's fascinating to read about them and what they do propaganda-wise.
Correctly, despite being communist, they're not explicitly anti-monarchist because they recognize the importance of the Japanese monarchy, the Japanese culture.
I think they did that as a compromise. Their big thing is getting troops off of Okinawa. They really want the Americans out of Okinawa.
You're not getting Okinawa back. Stop trying to get Okinawa back. It's our colony now.
I think we should probably leave Okinawa as well. I agree with them on that point because of what's gone down there with the Marine Corps bases. Not the greatest thing.
Yeah, that's a reason to punish the Marines, not to give up Okinawa.
Well, the Okinawans also want us out, the native people. They also want the Japanese out.
But they're not going to get either of those things.
Yeah, but they want it really badly. They also want the Marines to stop, committing hate crimes on their island.
Yeah, we really should get the Marines under control.
We should just, make it an Air Force base, not a Marine base. I think that would fix a lot of the issues.
Yeah, but of course, there'd be a huge argument about the tradition of the Marines in the island, considering that they took that island in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. Or better yet, we move all the Marines on Okinawa to Taiwan to make the CCP sweat a bit more.
China.
Hot war, hot war, hot war. World War III, World War III. We gotta defend the microchips.
You see, inside me, to quote the meme, inside me there are two wolves. One hates war and doesn't want to see violence. The other one is other wolf is extremely jingoistic and really just wants to watch the enemies of America burn.
The issue with anything with Taiwan, and this is getting a bit more into that geopolitical track, but they built a surface fleet. I don't know what they were smoking, but they built a surface fleet to try to fight the PLA Navy.
God bless the Taiwanese. That's all I have to say.
They should have just made submarines. The Americans advised them, make submarines. They were told multiple times by internal military advisors, make submarines. They went with a surface fleet.
Wait. They did? Wait, what if they did build submarines and we just don't know about them?
No, they said we're not building submarines. They dedicatedly say the surface fleet will hold them off, and they are building coastal defenses to work with the surface fleet.
But it's sure. No. I'm putting on my tinfoil hat. What if that's what they want us to believe because they know the the mainlanders are watching their communications and are keeping a lookout?
We can only hope.
We can only hope, but I have a hard time believing that the Taiwanese are that stupid.
Their military I think their military's had some corruption issues in the past, especially from the transition from KMT dictatorship to democracy.
That's just Taiwan in general. That's been the problem with the Kuomintang since the Chinese Republic.
There's a reason why Truman nicknamed him Cash My Check.
Wait, the KMT was nicknamed Cash My Check?
No, Chiang Kai-shek was.
Oh, Chiang Kai-shek was nicknamed Cash My Check.
By Truman because he kept on asking for money and not doing anything with the money and arms. You would just sit on them to save them from the Civil War.
Part of me wonders why the dissident right never brought that back for Zelensky.
But
because wouldn't you want to? I mean, there's a nickname right there. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't fit.
Well, here's the thing: Zelensky actually uses the material. It's not just sitting on a stockpile for the future Ukrainian civil war or something, so he could come out on top.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, no, like literally, Chiang Kai-shek would get like a shipment of guns and then just put them off in some mountain in Yunnan and then wait and sit on it as a stockpile. So whenever the Japanese were beaten out by the Americans, he'd be ready to just turn on the communists in the United Front.
Oh, I see. I'm I'm just honestly thinking about it. I'm a little bit shocked that the communists actually won the Chinese Civil War.
Well,
It
no,
sounds like they kind of pulled.
That's because of how incompetent and awful the Kuomintang were.
yeah, no, they were not good. And also the like Soviets were a boon after the invasion of Manchuria, handing that over to the like Chinese Communist Party. It helped them a lot. They also got all the Japanese gun caches.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
so a majority of Japanese guns went to the communist Chinese.
Yeah. At least the ones that were in northern China and Manchukuo and the former like puppet states of Japan.
They refused
I see.
in a way. Like they said, "Oh, we don't need your help."
The strangest thing about communist China, though, is like what happened to Puyi. Have y'all looked into that? Puyi, he was the last emperor of China.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. Didn't they actually I don't want to say brainwash, but re-educate him instead of executing him to see like even the former emperor fits into the communist system.
It was less brainwashing because I looked into it. A lot of it was like teaching Puyi like empathy and having him apologize to all the servants he like physically abused.
I never heard about the physical abuse.
Oh, Puyi was like a sadist. And like that was heavily recorded by everyone who was around him because he was raised to be a sadist since he was a child because of how the like late Qing Empire was, where it's like, oh yeah, you're a living god. These people are just your toys. And being raised like that since a child and having no one ever tell you no does not make the most rational and well-adjusted person.
And plus, he was
so it was just a Qing thing that the emperor was a god.
I don't think it was just a Qing thing, but like they got very much like hatred for the Han Chinese near the end, and it got way into cultural repression. That's why, you know, that long strand of hair that we like a lot of people associate with China. Same with like the dresses that are like rather tight or like rather long with that knitted buns.
Those are all Manchu cultural references that they forced on the Han Chinese.
Exactly. Yeah, like. So that the Han were treated with somewhat disgust, so Puyi was like encouraged to like torture these people. And when he was leading Manchukuo, that didn't go away. Well, at least the figurehead of Manchukuo for the Kuomintang army. But what happened under the communist Chinese regime is they just kind of had him go around and apologize, and then he got a job as like a janitor at a museum. It's the weirdest thing to read about. But he's just like, yeah, no, I'm happy with my life. I learned what I did wrong.
I mean, I will give the Chinese Communist Party credit. They are better than most communists because they didn't just kill him.
Oh yeah,
the whole point was to get one over on the Soviets for not having killed their monarch. And they're like, yeah, no, we could convince him. We could convince him to be a good Maoist.
And they did. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, they did. Damn.
Well, forcibly.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. That's something I could give the CCP some credit for.
Again, Frederick, from what I've read, and I might be wrong on this.
And I am no communist,
but a lot of it just seemed like, again, teaching Puyi empathy and having him apologize to anyone he ordered to be beaten that was still alive and that they could get a hold of.
Damn.
Also, heirs. So.
Wait, what, Frederick?
He didn't have any heirs. So, yeah. The Qing died with him.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest struggles. If there was ever a monarchist restoration for China, who would end up being the monarch? There's a few people who managed to track down the living heirs of Confucius, but
like Confucius was just a philosopher and basically a jurist for China at the time.
Yeah, Confucius is not. Confucius is not.
Right, but it's the furious. Like that would be the closest thing to like maybe base it off of, because there really isn't any way to
What about that one Chinese general, Yukai Shikai?
The thing is, he was just a general that tried seizing power, and he was also very unpopular. I don't think anyone like how he's remembered is like anyone that was his descendant would not be like restored.
Yeah.
And you have
say,
to remember how worshipped Sun Yat-sen is by both the KMT and Taiwan and the CCP. They all love Sun Yat-sen, so I don't think we'll ever really see China return to a monarchy.
Yeah. Also, well, Yuan
Unless-
Shikai was. Oh
unless-
no. I think that Yuan Shikai was more of a dictator than a monarchist, though.
But he gave himself the title.
Unless
I
of course,
see.
the descendant of Sun Yat-sen declares himself emperor. What if that happens?
Yeah.
Then they would say he's betraying the three principles of his his ancestor, and that he's a fraud for doing so. Because like Sun Yat-sen was all about republicanism, death to the monarchy, death to tradition.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh yeah, of course
yeah.
he was.
Big
Yeah,
on
he was.
Protestantism.
He was a big Republican.
Wait.
wasn't, like,
He was
Also,
Protestant?
if I remember correctly, wasn't there like after the Republic of China, like wasn't like the early Republic of China was like really cordial with the United States, and they had a bunch of Christian missionaries come over to China trying to convert people.
Like,
No,
I
think
KMT
China.
loved America.
I am honestly really skeptical of the idea of China ever becoming a democracy, simply because of the tragedy of the commons. That being the fact that there are just so many people in China that coming up with an ideal and realistic democracy that represents anyone's interest is impossible with that many people.
Yeah.
Like,
India's a democracy, but a very flawed one.
India is having also their own little miniature rise of fascism over there
Right.
with the like what is it?
The Hindu Vista or something.
Yeah, it was like they have their own little fascist movement over there.
I think it's like Hindu. I think it's like Hinduva.
In national,
like-
The DJP, I think.
Yeah.
But like, I have a hard time. Like, maybe China has fair elections, but I doubt China will ever have free elections. Like, I feel like even if it's a soft authoritarianism, like Germany, China is always going to be somewhat authoritarian because there's no way to have a nation with that many people without, laying down the law.
The thing,
I
with
see.
China, the systems are always authoritarian because that's also just kind of baked in culturally. Where if they're adopting a democracy, it will not be liberal. Like one could argue, even now they have a pseudo democracy kind of going on. Again, not liberal, not really representative of anything that the left would consider, not left, West would consider a democracy.
Yeah.
But it has its own weird way of social accountability where local corruption is tolerated to a degree, but if you overgo that corruption, you're removed either by the people or the government or a combination of both. And those who are more competent and less corrupt tend to rise to the ranks on the top. They also have like their own weird corporatism system going on.
Yeah. Well, wait, so would you argue is communist China corporatist, or like the CCP?
The CCP and Chinese communism, especially now, tends to take up a more corporatist ideal. Like they have a thing where they bring the industry leader, they bring in the state. The industry leader and the state bargain over what price a certain drug's going to be when it goes to the market, what represents the best interest of the people.
That was like state.
Isn't that just corporatism? Isn't that like a little bit similar to like Italy?
There's
Italy?
whole papers that have been written about the corporatism that happens in East Asia, both in China and Singapore.
Oh, I see. I mean, yeah. Oh, Singapore is corporatist too.
They at least show that kind of economic tradition. They might not call it corporatism, but it heavily resembles it. I'll send you the paper on it that I have.
I've heard arguments that the Nordic countries are corporatists.
Most social democracies take some aspects of corporatism. You have to remember, not all corporatism is fascistic corporatism. There's corporatism that existed outside of that fascist
Nordic countries used to be very tripartist. They've relaxed a little bit from that, but back in their heyday, when they really set up their economic models, they were extremely tripartist.
What do you mean by tripartist?
Like they followed that corporatist model of the corporations, the unions, and the government all sitting down and working together.
Oh, I see. But but yeah, I know there's other types of corporatism besides fascism. Like I know that.
I know. I just wanted to go for everyone else listening.
I know that a lot of people don't, but I do.
Not to interrupt you guys' conversations, but we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So,
But
right?
anyway, before we close out, since we didn't really get onto the topic of art too much, we did have a wonderful conversation about culture. But I want to finish off the evening by asking everyone, what's your favorite art genre?
Like, what do you mean by genre?
Like, what's your favorite kind of art?
Oh, what was it? That red.
I'd have to say paintings.
But what's
Well,
that?
I mean, like style.
Oh, style. Oh, it's either got to be futurist or no, futurist for art, like for paintings and such, and for music, doom metal.
For painting, I like well, for both painting and sculpture, I like neoclassical or impressionist. But for architecture, I am a strong fan of Art Deco.
Oh, architecture wise, I love Romanesque. The Romanesque style of architecture to me, just I don't know why, just
I like Art Deco because it's a uniquely American style and it really reflects on our country and our culture great.
Good.
What about you, Arjun?
Now, favorite style of art?
Yeah, favorite style of art.
I gotta say for architecture, I kind of like Art Deco. I would say because I'm American. I would say I like a lot of like East. I like a lot of like East Coast and like yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Frederick, you?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
no,
you go
sorry
ahead.
for cutting you off. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Huh?
Yeah, I'd say Art Deco is my favorite type of architecture. At least what I've seen.
Frederick?
What?
what's your favorite type of art?
Architecture or
All of it.
Like, what's your favorite style?
yeah. What's that symbol they use to them Orthodox icons?
I know that has a name, and it's also a beautiful style.
Should we just call it like Byzantine?
Yeah, I think that's the name of it. It's just Byzantine architecture and Byzantine art.
Yeah. Also, when it comes down to architecture, I'm a little bit more towards the neo-classical kind of like architecture.
In my opinion, the American architecture style should be a mixture of Art Deco and neoclassical.
Yeah.
Honestly, I say we should just go all in on the Art Deco. Like, we should go to a city and feel like we're in like Batman the Animated Series, in my opinion.
Yes.
That'd be rad.
All right, everyone.
Well, I think America used to have a lot of like those types of cities. Like a lot of our cities were like that, and then they got demolished.
Yeah. So the outro?
The automotive industry and its consequences, but that's a story for another time. Would you all please bow your heads and join me in a prayer?
All right, see ya.
See ya. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thy is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Heavenly Father, protect us as we leave this place. Fill our lives with joy and prosperity. We thank you for the friendship and fellowship we had this evening, and we pray that we have many more such evenings to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for joining us tonight. See us on YouTube. See us on Podbean. See us on anywhere you can. God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and good night.